Welcome to episode 220 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent and Jason here, and this week we've got Ethan Luck from Metal Up Your Podcast joining us.
That's right. The Metallica goodness just does not stop.
That's right. You notice it's like every few weeks there's something about Metallica here.
And I'm okay with that.
That's right.
I mean, as anyone that listens to this for more than 2 seconds knows, I'm a rabid Metallica geek. They're my favorite band in the world. They're the best band in the world. And I don't give a fuck what you say they are, so eat a dick. But at the same time, I also know that they could literally release a record of, them playing racquetball. No voices, just if it was them in there playing racquetball, playing, handball in that gym, and you just hear the balls bouncing off the wall. You wouldn't even know, just to know that it's them in the room doing it, I would fucking buy it.
And it would be better than Saint Anger.
It would be better than Saint Anger. You're goddamn right it would. But I would buy it even if they remaster Saint Anger, I'll buy that goddamn thing.
That's right.
So to just keep having this Metallica content, I kind of feel guilty, like my preferences are hoarding yours or something sometimes,
No, I love Metallica, so.
I know you do, but I mean, I'm just, I'm just saying. So, just, to get.
Yeah, when are we going to start doing Faith No More podcasts?
Well, I'm just saying we can.
Okay.
We can do all kinds of Faith No More and Guns N' Roses shit. No Spice Girl shit, but the other two I'm fine with all day long. I think actually, I'd be down for another full-on Guns N' Roses discussion. We're probably due for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tangent City there. But Ethan Luck is on the podcast. Now we've had both guys from Metal Up Your Podcast on the show. So it is quite an honor, and it's a really cool conversation. Yeah,
we're going to get into that here in just a bit. But first, we need to let you know we're sponsored by DEB Concerts and MedFarm. MedFarm is a dispensary located here in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma at 24683 East Highway 51. You can't miss them. They're right off Highway 51 when you're driving between Broken Arrow and Coweta. They've got a huge selection. They're always running specials. They're always doing giveaways on Facebook. So give these guys a follow. It's MEDPHARM. Get in there, and if you've already got a card, all you got to do is go in there and say, hey, Thunder Underground sent me, or I heard about you guys on Thunder Underground, and they'll give you 10% off your order, which is a very cool thing. But if you don't have a card and you need to see a doctor, to get one, every Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., they have a doctor on site. So it's that simple. They are also family-owned, veteran-owned. And another thing that I forget to mention most of the time is that, they've posted about that they're 100% funded by themselves, where a ton of these dispensaries that are popping up around are like funded by out-of-state investors, sometimes even out-of-country investors. So, this is a true mom-and-pop style operation. And to top it off, 30% of their profits, they're sending to help build no-kill animal shelters. So not only are they a straight-up family-owned business, they're also doing something extremely good. They're
doing the Lord's work.
That's right. So, yeah, get in there, check them out. Tell them we sent you. MedPHARM on Facebook, and it's MedFarm OK on Instagram. DEB Concerts. Maybe by now they've announced new shows, but as we've mentioned in the last couple episodes, we're recording these things way in advance. So, all we can tell you about DEB is that they brought in a ton of great shows here recently. Over the past year or two, they brought in Sebastian Bach, Tom Kiefer, Dokken, Saxon, Jack Russell's Great White, Lita Ford, Stryper, Beasto Blanco, Slaughter, Steelheart. They recently even brought Snoop Dogg and Nelly to the BOK Center, so they've got some arena shows going on now. Most all their shows are always at the Ideal Ballroom, which is a fantastic venue. So, give them a follow on Facebook, the Streets Gone Wild page, to find out any updates on upcoming shows. And we'll be mentioning more next week. And in the meantime, what we can tell you is that they booked all the bands for the D&B processing stage at this year's Rocklahoma event. And this is their third year sponsoring that stage. It runs from May 23rd to 26th, and the D&B processing stage will feature a pre-party on Thursday night, headlined by Slaughter. It'll also feature Strutter, a KISS tribute band, and Poster Child, and I believe Rocket Science.
Yes.
And then the other nights will be headlined by Beasto Blanco, Lita Ford, and Ace Frehley. And those days will also feature sets from the Midnight Devils, Ratchet Dolls, Down for Five, Dead Metal Society, First Strike, Driver, Charlie Bonnet and the Folk and Gas Holes, Grind, the Normandies, and Zen Hipster.
Of course.
Zen Hipster, we should also mention, will be opening for Head PE at the Shrine.
That's right.
May 7th. I don't know why we haven't mentioned that before this episode.
Well,
We've just been slacking.
There's a lot of things going on in
That's right.
Thunder Underground worlds and Hipster world, and trying to keep them all straight. May 7th at the Shrine, we're opening for Head PE. I have tickets. They're only $10 if you get them from me. So hit me up, get at me. And,
you can get at him by messaging Zen Hipster on Facebook or messaging us on Facebook.
Yes,
or
us or
thethunderunderground@gmail.com.
That's right. Just either or, however you got to do it. Yeah, look us up and we'll get you tickets.
Yeah. So that's not a DEB concert, but that kind of wrapped up DEB concert.
There you go.
So huge thank you to them. And a huge thank you to MedFarm.
Of course.
All right, so we mentioned in there Slaughter. Mark Slaughter was on this podcast just about 3 episodes ago.
Yeah.
We mentioned Beasto Blanco, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be on this podcast next week. If he's not, whatever. I said he, Chuck Garrick. There's not a human named Beasto Blanco. I don't know. But anyway,
nice.
Yeah. We've also recently, about 2 episodes ago, had this episode where we talked to Kevin Graham about the Metallica show in Kansas City that, we recorded it like right after the show.
Yeah.
That night while we were drinking. We also talked about the Wichita show and the Tulsa show and then just random shows that the 3 of us had seen throughout the years.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of Metallica, if you don't listen to Metal Up Your Podcast, I think that's kind of weird because they're pretty much the definitive source for Metallica these days, in my opinion, outside of Metallica.com.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe even more so than that,
You're exactly right. I mean, if other than, straight from the horse's mouth, Metallica.com, anything you need to know or want to, pose to them, Metal Up Your Podcast is a place to be. It really is.
Yeah. They've got an episode pretty much on every subject you could think of when you think of Metallica.
Yes.
They've covered it. They're both great to listen to, and they're both extremely knowledgeable, and they're both guys from the industry, so that helps out, I believe, as well with their input.
Oh, a ton. I mean, you're getting more than just a fan perspective. These guys they're touring musicians, they're songwriters, they're crew members, they're band leaders. I mean, they're session musicians. This is their life. This is their profession. They know a ton. They know more than I'll ever know, and they're not fucking around.
And he knows a shitload, guys.
Well, I do what I can. So, and Metallica just happens to be both their favorite band. They do work in so many genres, and that's fine. That's great. That's actually better, I think. It gives this band and this genre a fresh take, and so this is the place you want to be. I mean, if you're a diehard Metallica fan, you need to get on the Metal Up Your Podcast train. They've got a great, culture growing over there. So many fans from all over the world. They do episodes on just certain years. They do gear episodes. I mean, you name it. That announcement about S&M 2, they did a whole hour and a half just on that.
Right.
I mean, so this is your one-stop shop for Metallica, hands down.
Yeah, the other half of Metal Up Your Podcast, Clint Wells, was on here on episode 207 back in January. So if you haven't heard that one, go check that out as well.
Exactly.
But Jason mentioned how these guys, both of them, they record stuff and tour with musicians that are outside the genre of hard rock or metal, what you would think of in Metallica. And that's never been more evident than on their Covered Our World Blackened EPs. So we're going to play you a song right now from one of those. It's actually from the second EP, and this is Ethan's version of The Memory Remains.
Fortune, fame, mirror vein, gone insane, but the memory Heavy rings on fingers wave, another star denies the grave. See the nowhere crowd, crowded nowhere tears of honor, like twisted vines that grow, hide and swallow mansions whole, dim the light of an already faded prima donna. Fortune, fame, mirror vein, gone insane. Fortune, fame, mirror vein, gone insane, but the memory remains. Heavy rings hold cigarettes up to lips that time forgets, while the Hollywood sun sets behind your back. And can't the band play on? Just listen to play my song. Ash to ash, dust to dust, fade to black. Fortune, fame, mirror vein, gone insane. Fortune, fame, mirror vein, gone insane. Dance, little tin goddess. Drift away, fade away, little tin goddess. Ash to ash, dust to dust, fade to black. Fortune, fame, mirror vein, gone insane. Fortune, fame, mirror vein, gone insane, but the memory remains. Ash to ash, dust to dust, fade to black, the memory remains. Yeah, to the faded prima donna. Yeah, 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 yeah. Dance, little tin goddess, dance.
The Memory Remains from Ethan Luck. That's pretty badass.
I think it is. I like all of his reggae versions of these songs on that EP. I think this is the best one. It just snaps right into place and just grabs you, immediately. I love it. And it also just kind of speaks to, his solo record.
Yeah.
Is right along these lines. If that's your thing.
Let It Burn.
Yeah, Let It Burn. It's a great fucking record. It's a great reggae record. It's just a great record in general. The songwriting's out of this world. Just something you can relax to. It's awesome.
Yeah, so if you dig that version of The Memory Remains, they put out 2 EPs so far. The first one I know you can find digitally, but the second one I think you can still only find if you're a Patreon, or a patron, on their Patreon.
I know that they're working on a third one, so eventually this one will be made public. So, but definitely, any of these guys, have Patreons, try to help them out if you can. It just keeps us going. So definitely hit them up.
Yeah. So Ethan Luck, like we just talked about, has a reggae album. He's also toured with Kings of Leon. Recently he's touring with Need to Breathe. He was in Demon Hunter.
Yes.
For a while. He was in Reliant. He's still in Reliant K, right?
I don't think so.
When they're active?
I don't know. I don't think.
Okay. Maybe I misunderstood.
I don't.
He was in Reliant K?
Yeah.
Who am I missing?
The Supertones.
Yeah,
OC
right.
Supertones.
That's right. So
I remember them from way back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of spans the gamut there. And then he's got the reggae solo album. And yeah, so check out Ethan's music and check out Metal Up Your Podcast.
Definitely.
All right, let's just get into this. Here's Ethan Luck.
We've done probably, I'm sure, 40 episodes remotely, if not more. Especially on Soul Tournament Kings, it was like, I was on it.
You were everywhere.
Yeah, I was all over the world. So, yeah, exactly. So,
well, getting into the whole Metal Up Your Podcast thing, I mean,
we started.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know the truth. Always record. Yeah.
Always. But now I'm just would it have started when it did, or would it have if Hardwired wasn't out and it just kind of the whole Metallica machine was amped back up and everybody was excited, or would it just have started at a random time anyway?
It still would have started because the idea was initially on my end. And I think I had the idea before. It was leading up to Hardwired, and I was just getting excited about the record because it was the first record in 8 years. And I already had my other podcast going at the time called Pirate Satellite, and I was like, I loved doing it, but that was just me on my own. And I thought I should do a Metallica podcast because I thought it'd be fun to do a podcast about a band I loved, especially a band that you could do so much content on. And so I thought, this would be really fun to do. And then the more I was starting to kind of think about how to do it and stuff, I was like, I think it'd be better if the co-host. And so that's when I called Clint, and because we had that connection. That's kind of how we met, was over bonding over Metallica, So I think I think it still would have happened, but I don't think it would have been nearly as good if it was just me. Oh, I know it wouldn't have been as good if it was just me, because as you guys know, doing 2 hosts, it's like you can bounce things off each other and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it would have been interesting if it was just me, but I don't think it would have come close to what it's done with the 2 of us. And as far as how many downloads we've gotten and fans and all that kind of stuff, Yeah. I mean, I had a podcast fan come to the show last night in Wichita, this guy named Joey. So, yeah, it's crazy. It's weird.
And which leads me to my next thing is, it's almost like a culture's built up over this podcast. Does that add more pressure, or did you think it would get this wide open?
We wanted it to get where it is, definitely, but I kind of equate it to being in a band. It's like you start a band, you hope that you achieve this level of maybe popularity, or to sell some records or get some fans. And we hoped that for the podcast. Well, it'd be so cool to reach. They have Metallica has this huge audience. It'd be cool to somehow reach as many of them as possible. And we're not even close to what their fan base is.
Yeah.
But for what we've done, I mean, it still surprises me sometimes. Especially on the back end of where we upload our podcast to, this site called Simplecast, you can look at a map of where everyone's listening to your podcast. which is crazy. And like, so sometimes when you zoom out, because you think like, maybe it's just kind of regionally or like just in the US, and then all of a sudden we see that we have a ton of listeners in London, a ton in Australia. And it's like, even like if it's a couple listens, but we have some like in random countries and like Russia. It's so weird. Like, but it's Metallica's one of those bands, their fan base is like, they're in touch with each other, and they, people that are on the forums will talk about it, or we've posted on the forums over the years. We were much more active on the forums when we first started the podcast just to get the word out. But so yeah, it's definitely, it's a trip to like, look at it and be like, wow, we have like a lot of people that listen to us every week and stuff, or even like throwing our pre-party before the Metallica show in Nashville, a couple months ago. I mean, we had the bar packed out all night long, and it was obviously, it didn't hurt that Metallica was playing the next day in Nashville, but it was still cool that like all these people were coming up to us that had never met us in person. And it was like being in a band. Like, we had our merch set up with our t-shirts and all stuff, and I brought my music to sell, and it ended up feeling like we were doing a meet and greet. It was so weird, like just sitting by our merch booth. We're like, let's go hang back there for a minute. And all of a sudden there's like a line of people that want to meet us. It just, that's the best way to describe it. Is it's like being in a band and all of a sudden you've got fans and people that know who you are and stuff. And I've dealt with that for years and years, touring for 20 plus years now. But it's super weird. It's cool though. I'm stoked. It's a cool community for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's weird that there was a void for you guys to fill, because to me, I would think there would have been something years ago.
Yeah,
Think
right.
like Kiss and all these other bands at that level.
Yep.
There was tons of these podcasts.
Yeah, there's like
Metallica,
6 or 7 Kiss podcasts out there.
Metallica, there's a few now, but they all seem to come around the same time you guys did, I think.
It wasn't long after, so I don't know if we ever talked about this on the show or not, but I have a close friend named Ryan Downey, who is a manager of this metal band I was in years ago, and I hit him up. I'd already asked Clint to do the podcast with me, and we were like spitballing names and all that stuff for the show. And we finally settled on one. I remember I was in Washington, D.C. when I was touring with Kings of Leon, and I had a night off, and I was just in my hotel room, like coming up with ideas for the show and topics and all this stuff. And then I set up our Instagram and Twitter and Facebook that night. Then I took a screenshot of one of them and sent it to my buddy Ryan. I was like, dude, check it out. I'm launching a Metallica podcast January 1st of 17. And he replies back with a screenshot of Speak and Destroy. He goes, so am I. I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So there was talk for just a couple days, if we should all do it together. Mm-hmm. Ryan was like, what if we teamed up and made this one thing? And I think it would have been really cool, but I think just because Ryan lives in California, every episode would have to be remote.
Yeah.
At that point, and then with me and Clint both traveling separately, it's like, man, I could be in London, Ryan could be in California, and Clint could be in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And it would just to work all that together, I think would have gotten really annoying, But Ryan's a great friend, and his show's good, and would have been. I think there could have been some cool possibilities with it, but I think we made the right decision in doing it separately for sure.
Well, he doesn't do near as many episodes as you guys.
Yeah, I mean we got. I don't think we've missed. I think we missed one Monday, or it came out like a day or two late. Yeah. But I mean, we haven't really missed a week with. We've never had a week where no content has been put out. I think even for this Monday, because of our touring schedules, I think we're going to do something a little different. But there's still going to be something on Monday. That's just kind of. Sometimes it has to work that way. We can't always dive deep into something, especially when we're traveling. And this tour I'm on now, it's like I have way less days off than I did in the past when I was with Kings. Like those guys would take a ton of days off. So I had a hotel room every day off. So it was like I had like 3 days a week where I had, if I wanted, nothing to do. Yeah. And I could just hit a Clint and be like, hey, I've got these 3 days totally wide open, where this one's a little different,
Yeah. Well, going back to what he said, I remember it was Thanksgiving break, I think of a couple of years ago, and I was listening to Gene Simmons on Chris Jericho. And Gene Simmons said Kiss is the band that's got the most amount of podcasts, whatever. Yeah. So that got me thinking, well, I wonder, there's got to be. And you and Alpha Metallica were the first things that came up. Yeah. And so I just spent the whole break just catching up on all that because I'm a Metallica nut.
Sure, yeah.
But it's just like I would have figured something would have been started forever ago.
Man, even before I asked Clint to if he wanted to do it with me, I looked and looked and looked and could not find another Metallica podcast. I was like, there's no way. And then at one point I found an article from like 3 years before, and I want to say it was a similar name to like Metal Up Your Cast or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I already had that one of those names. I still have the list in my phone of all the potential names. And one of the names I thought of ended up becoming another Metallica podcast later. But yeah, I don't know. I think my wife ended up finding one, what's it called? Metallichat.
Yeah.
And I don't think they do every week at all, you know, and they didn't, from what I could tell, like, you know, there weren't any reviews on theirs, like nobody knew about it. So the one technically existed just before ours. And so we kind of came out of the gate swinging, like we dropped 3 episodes the first day and haven't missed a week since. And then I think Alpha Metallica was like, Tom did his maybe 2 or 3 months later, he launched his, and then Ryan ended up not launching Speak and Destroy, I think, till that summer maybe. And his is cool. His is a whole different flavor because he's a journalist. Like he's done that kind of entertainment reporting, all that stuff for years. You'll see him on E! News sometimes. He'll be on, what's the website? It's like a lot of like horror stuff. He'll go to Comic-Con, do all those things and stuff, and interview actors and do panels and stuff like that. So I think he's been able to integrate all his skills in journalism into this podcast. So his whole thing is every episode's a guest, you know, so like that. And we'll have guests from time to time. Sometimes it'll be 2 or 3 episodes in a row. Then we'll have a guest for months, you know. It just depends on timing and stuff like that. But yeah, it was weird. Then like, you know, I think there's, I don't know, 5 or 6 now or something like that. But yeah, it's a trip. Tom's is ending this year too.
Yeah, I know.
It's getting to the end of the alphabet.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be on it another time or two before he's done.
Hell yeah.
Care to share any of those names, or do you want to keep them for yourself?
As far as what?
The names you had for the podcast.
Dude, I'll read the list right now, man. I was literally just talking to somebody, one of our other crew guys out here was like, he's a Metallica fan too. And so we were talking and I was telling him about the podcast, you know, when the tour first started. And so it was about literally 15 minutes ago. I was like, I got to hit up these dudes I'm doing this podcast with, and they're fans of our podcast. And he asked me kind of something similar, like, what other names did you have? And I was like, I still have to listen to my phone. So I just read this to him like 20 minutes ago. Here's it's not a huge list, but, and so like I said before, one of these was actually ended up becoming another Metallica podcast. This guy does solo now. So some of these aren't great. And this is the order I thought of them in. Podcastica, Metallicast, which is now Metallica Podcast.
Yeah.
Podcast with Puppets, Master of Podcasts, Cast 'em All. I like that one.
Yeah.
So the 6th one was Metal Up Your Podcast, Metal Up Your Cast, Podcast Inc. This was one of my favorites, Podcaster of Sorrow.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's good.
I was just trying to think of puns with the word podcast,
Yeah.
and I could have, like Ryan's is Speak and Destroy, so it's, you know, you're not using the word podcast at all.
Yeah.
This was actually my favorite, even though a lot of people may have been turned off because it's a Saint Anger reference, but Some Kind of Podcast.
Nice.
Podcast Under Ice, wherever I may podcast and destroy. So not far off from Ryan's podcast and destroy.
I think you nailed it with Metal Up Your Podcast, but Cast 'em All, I really like.
Cast 'em All, yeah. Podcaster of Sorrow been cool, but I think what it came down to was like some of those were a little more obscure references, like you know, someone that's maybe a casual Metallica fan may not know Harvester of Sorrow or may not know anything off of Saint Anger.
Yeah.
So it was just called Some Kind of Podcast.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. So Metal Up Your Podcast just sounded like it's like has the word metal in it. Yeah. It's a play off the old Metal Up Your Ass thing. So it seemed to work. And I literally made a logo that same night. I like that the first logo we did with the Metallica M, black and white logo. I made it that night in the hotel room. Sent it to Clint. He's like, dude, that's awesome. So that's kind of how it. Yeah.
Well, if it was some kind of podcast, somebody thought it was like a Grand Funk thing or something. You know?
Yeah, or just, I mean,
or John Hughes movie 80s fucking.
Totally. Well, with some kind of podcast too, you don't really, you wouldn't know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just some kind of podcast. Yeah. And if it was in the Metallica font, maybe, but if someone saw it listed and didn't see the font or the logo, they wouldn't know. So.
Yeah. Right.
Well, was there anything that you've learned about Metallica doing this that you didn't know before?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, there's stuff I'm still learning. Literally, like the dude Joey that came to the show last night in Wichita was talking to me about some recordings, like alternate versions of songs or things that I didn't really know about. There's stuff that you learn all the time. I mean, I've been a fan of this band since I was like 11 years old, and I'm still like learning stuff about them. And if it wasn't for this podcast, like I would still know a lot about them. But we learn a ton from our fans too, and our listeners that like write in, or we meet in person, or whatever. We've gotten episode ideas because someone's been like, "Oh, did you know about this or whatever?" Or like, "Wait, what?" You know, like the whole like this is obscure, but like the whole Pancakes Go thing. You know that?
I don't think so.
So anytime you see them live, now you're never going to unhear it now. Watch any like footage of them playing Master Puppets live, and right before it goes into Kirk's big Ripper solo, James always goes, "Pancakes go." He says, "Pancakes go," and it was an old thing that it started, I guess, with Anthrax and Metallica turned back in the day, and I think Charlie from Anthrax, I think it was him or Scott, I think Charlie had asked Cliff Burton, like, "What is James saying on Master Puppets right before the solo?" And Cliff had joked and said, "Pancakes go." So he thought that's what it said. Or maybe Charlie thought he said, it sounds like Pancakes go. And they thought that was hilarious. So he started actually saying that live. And sure enough, like the shows I saw in January, like he said Pancakes go. So like little things like that I've learned a bunch, which is crazy, you know, like it's just all these little tiny things. Or, I mean, I've watched so much more like behind the scenes stuff than I ever thought I'd ever watch. And stuff that I didn't know was even out there. Like, I mean, they're such a well documented band ever since the Black Album. But I mean, there's stuff before that, obviously, with Cliff and Mall and a lot of footage from the Ozzy tour and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, diving deep into even when we've done episodes like the Year in the Life series we've been doing. Even that one, you know, if I'm researching a year, it's like, okay, on their website you can look at the timeline. Not much happened, but then I'll start searching on Google like Metallica, you know, 93 or whatever, and all of a sudden you'll find, they did this little contest on MTV for a fan to fly to San Francisco and jam with the band and stuff, and it's like, that wasn't on their website, but I found it, and so you find all these little things that they actually did do when they were off on tour, and so yeah, it's constant. I'm sure there's even more that I'll learn as the show keeps going.
How long does it take to put together one of those year episodes?
That one takes a little longer because it's a lot more research. You know, certain years it's easy just to go to their website and like, okay, they were super busy. Here's this tour that they released this record, this whatever EP. You know, but it's, you know, we like to be more thorough and find out other stuff that's not on the website because, you know, okay, it shows that they toured from this date to this date, but like, were there any notable things that happened in there? Like, special performances. Like there was one of the years where I think we were on the Sheds tour, and the last show of the tour, like Rob Halford came out with them and sang a Judas Priest song. Cool. That wasn't on their website timeline thing, but you can kind of dig deep and find that kind of stuff. So it takes a bit. I mean, the last one that I researched, I think, was 93, 94 maybe. Sometimes we combine the years because sometimes like literally nothing happened. Like they took the year off or whatever, or like one thing happened. So that one, I remember sitting in a hotel room and I was probably researching for about 2 hours.
Wow.
Just to make sure and you know, you're kind of, with doing an episode for a podcast, you're also trying to consider length too. We don't want it to be like a short, you know, most of ours are like 2 hours long. So we don't want it to be super short, you know. If it's like an hour and a half, it's fine, you know, but we've had some go 3.5 hours, you know, depending on what it is. If it's usually that's with a guest, like if Paul Moak's on the show or something, it'll be a lot longer. But yeah, that one, I mean, you know, I'll research for 2 hours, and then me and Clint will record for, you know, hour and 45 to 2 hours, and then edit for another hour or so, depending on how many. And we do it sometimes, especially if we're in person together at my studio or Clint's studio, we'll do a lot more inserts, little song examples, things like that. And that takes a little more time too, just to edit the episode. You know, there's times where I'll zoom out on my Logic session and there's just like 25 tracks and there's all these little clips of things we've put in, but it makes the show better, you know, people like that kind of stuff, you know, and sometimes we don't put a lot of those in there, but yeah, for those year episodes of it takes a little while. Sometimes it's good to spread out over a couple of days too. Like, all right, I'll research today, we'll record tomorrow, and then we'll edit that night or the next day, depending on time. Like Saturday today as we're recording this, so if we were doing that today, I'd have to edit it tomorrow. Or we've done it where it's like we'll start recording at 9 p.m. Sunday night, and our goal is to always get out by midnight Sunday night, Monday morning. But sometimes, you know, we go a little late and all of a sudden it's out, you know, a couple hours late, which doesn't really affect anybody unless they're like, you know, in Europe or something to listen to our podcast in the morning.
Well, you know, You've talked to a lot of these, on the Metal Tales segment that you do. You've talked to a lot more of these guys, but those diehard black ticket people that they go to every show.
It's crazy, man.
How do they fucking do
afford
that?
it?
Where's the money? Do you have a fucking job? It's insane.
It is crazy, man. There's a lot of people like Sarah Stovek, who we've talked about on the show. She's been a guest a couple times for Metal Tales. She's a sweetheart. Her and her husband Pete are amazing people. I've never really talked with them about it, but I think some people, maybe they work a ton or maybe have a job that's flexible enough where they can. Sarah and Pete went to almost every show in the North American tour, 30 plus shows.
Yeah, and aren't they the same ones? I think on their Instagram they put a screenshot of they bought Australia tickets. Was that
they did, yeah.
Holy shit.
They got tickets to. I think what people like Sarah and Pete do, or Met Club Mike is one of the popular dudes. Yeah. He went to every single show. Metallica posted a photo of him. They all wore suits for the last show and stuff. It was really cool. But I think a lot of times what a lot of these people do is that when something gets announced, they just buy tickets right away and then plan it out later. You know, it's for me, when I saw S&M get announced, I was like, okay, how do I do this? It turns out I can't even go because I'm going to be on vacation with my wife for 2 weeks. And so I'm like, well, I just can't go to it, Yeah. But, I think people like Sarah and Pete or any of these diehards that we've gotten to know over the years, that gets announced, tickets go on sale, they buy tickets, and then I'll figure it out. I got this many months to figure it out. So if they've got a normal job where they have to be there kind of 9 to 5, it's all right, well, I've got 7 days of vacation left this year. I'm going to take it over that weekend, save up, whatever, and plan it out. Yeah. That seems to make a little more sense. Australia is a lot tough. That's a lot of money to fall down there, man. I've been to Australia numerous times, and it's I guess now minimum round trip to Australia, even just from LA, is probably going to be $1,200 at least, But plus, it's you and your wife or husband. It's that's double the price of everything, Yeah. But people love this band. I can't fault it, man. If I had more flexibility, I would probably go to way more shows, It is interesting, though. It might be fun to start talking to people about that aspect of their fandom,
He got to work at a few of them doing I can't even remember what it's called now.
Through CID for the...
Oh, you're doing CID stuff with them?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. The fan
It's a museum.
God. Yeah, it's the experiences.
Yeah, Whiplash.
Yeah. So you would get hired on as basically local crew to go in there and help. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, dude. That's a good. That's a great way to see a show if you're a fan of a band and you want to, see whatever band you love. Get on the local crew because then you show up, you push a bunch of cases, you get stuff set up, and then usually during the show you can you can't get up there on the rail, but you can kind of stand back and watch the show, and when the show's done, you got to work again. But
the good thing with the VIP packages is you're done once the show starts, so you can watch the show.
Yeah, totally.
You're not on. Because you're just working VIP and not crew, so.
Yeah. So so you didn't have to tear down that stuff with them, or?
Yeah, we tore it down, but we were done.
Probably didn't take that long.
One time, I think it was 5 or 10 minutes into the show. Another time was before the show.
Yeah, I figured all that stuff they travel with is probably in their own custom cases where they just open it up and it's all on display or whatever.
Yeah, several of the cases had displays already set up in them. And
right.
Some of the other stuff, like the interactive guitars.
Yeah.
All that stuff,
totally, man.
They've got one of their traveling crew doing that because they don't want to trust someone that's just coming in.
Yeah. It really is a good way to see a show and get paid. It's you get to, especially with something like that where you're done pretty quick at the end of the night where you can just go watch the show and then take off.
Yeah.
It's you make a little money, you get to work a little bit, watch your favorite band, and then.
Yeah. Well, in Kansas City, we were in line to get on the floor and we were right by Metal Mike.
Yeah.
And he was everybody was talking to him, and some guy just straight up asked him, dude, how do you do this? And he goes, well, I take a leave of absence or, I do factory work, so I'll just go find another job if I have to.
Yeah, some people...
wow, that freedom is, I can...
Yeah, if you don't have a job that's maybe you're not super passionate about, if it's just a factory job or whatever, and it's some kind of job you can kind of get whenever, and your bills aren't that high, it's all right, well, I'm just going to save up money and go do this, Or if you're, heck, you could even... You drive for Uber and Lyft or something, you got that flexibility where like, heck, if I was like single and wasn't a touring musician, like, because I'll do Uber and Lyft when I'm not touring if, you know, it's slow for me. It's like you could essentially like drive to the next city where your favorite band's playing, do Uber and Lyft all day, make money, and then go to the show. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a bad idea. Can't drive to Australia though.
That's tough.
Well, you mentioned talking to the guy earlier on the crew here. Do you get a weirder reaction from someone in this world knowing that you have a Metallica podcast, or you get a weirder reaction from Metallica fans knowing that you tour with Kings of Leon and Need to Breathe?
I think in the music world, in the touring world, people are more surprised when they hear a Metallica podcast. Because I think in general, sometimes, because, you know, podcasting is like insanely popular now. It's like the golden age of podcasting.
Yeah.
Everyone's starting a podcast, but I think a lot of people are still surprised when, like, you know, because there's a lot of people that, like me, when I first started my first podcast, it was like really nerve wracking. Like, oh man, I'm so nervous to put this out in the world. It's like putting out your first record. You know, it's like, what are people going to think about it? You know? So whenever I get in a conversation about stuff, and like the one dude I was talking about before about the podcast names, there was one day we were sound checking a few weeks ago, and I was just like, I was kind of waiting to sound check, and I was sitting there playing my guitar, and I just started playing like, I can't remember what it was, like Sanitarium or something. I was just kind of bored. And I was playing it with all these crazy delay pedals, making it sound weird. And he came over, he's like, he didn't know that I had the podcast, didn't know I was a Metallica fan. He just thought I was backing up Need to Breathe. And he's like, oh, you know that song? And I kind of looked at him like, excuse me? Like, and he's younger, you know, and I looked at him, I was like, you know that song? And he started to kind of quiz me. He's like, all right, do you know this? And I played it. He's like, what about this? And I go, hang on, let me stop you right there. I go, I'm not trying to be cocky at all. I just want to let you know before you start quizzing me on Metallica songs, I do a Metallica podcast. I've got some knowledge. And I've been playing Metallica songs on my guitar since I was 11. So he was kind of like, oh, wow, you do a podcast about that. So I think people are more surprised too because it's a very specific topic. Mm-hmm. It's not like I do a sports podcast or I do a general music podcast. It's like, oh, I do a podcast about one band. Yeah. So I think that's where people are more surprised, you know, and especially when I'm in an environment that's not metal at all. Yeah. You know, whether it's this or Kings of Leon or whatever, people are like, oh, wow, that's interesting, you know, and then when they ask, you know, how many downloads do you get? And I start telling them, they're like, oh, like it's a real podcast. Like you actually get listeners and fans and all this stuff. And yeah, it's this whole other kind of side life that's very surprising, I think, to some people, you know. Yeah. But it's fun, man. I still have friends that don't even think realize I do it.
That's awesome. So, switching gears a little bit, talk about the reggae covers on, you know, the cover.
It's kind of surprising,
like, were those hard to convert into reggae? Were there some that didn't work, so you had to... How did you know which ones that would work in that?
Man, I just kind of picked like 3 or 4 or 5 that I thought would be cool to cover in general. And then I just sat at home and I was like, I would just kind of do like a halftime beat and just that. And I would just play it like a normal, you know, an acoustic or whatever. I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of cool with that tempo and that feel. Mm-hmm. Then I would just change the guitar to a kind of reggae feel, change the drum beat and then kind of morph it into this thing. And it flowed pretty quick, you know. And I just thought of it, since I did a reggae record last year on my own, I just thought like, what a like full on left field, you know, kind of idea this would be to like throw out 3 reggae Metallica covers to the Metallica community. And people seemed to dig it. So I was, you know, and I thought they were fun and a little more experimental and weird. I don't know if I'll do it on the next cover thing we do, but yeah, I thought it was really fun and it's a fun way for us because we've done it a lot on the show where we have those radio episodes where we'll play other music and, you know, we kind of like want to try to get some of our listeners maybe exposed to music they never thought they'd listened to before too. It's just kind of a fun thing to do musically, you know. It's like I've never been one to just be into one style of music forever, you know, like, and some people are like that and that's totally cool. There's nothing wrong with it. I just grew up in a very diverse family of, you know, my dad teaching me all about all sorts of kinds of music. You know, like when I was getting into Metallica, my dad was teaching me about Led Zeppelin and, you know, to Paul Simon, to Steely Dan, to all these bands. And on top of that, I grew up and like was being influenced by all the Southern California music, like Social Distortion and No Doubt and all these bands. So I was getting this crazy eclectic amount of music growing up. So for this kind of idea, it was like, okay, most of our listeners are probably just metal fans. So like, let me take a song they know and make it like the style I grew up with and see how it goes. And people seem to dig it. So I was, I mean, it's still the song you like, it's just different styles.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's fun to try different, like the first, cover of Old Black thing we put out. I just did kind of like the singer-songwriter kind of Western-ish sound to it. And I just thought I'd do something different for the next one. So, that's just my eclectic taste in music coming out. I didn't really plan it out. It just kind of happened one day. I was like, this, Memory Remains sounds really cool, like chill and reggae and like, let's do it, And the way I do reggae, it's not like traditional. There's traditional elements to it, but it's kind of my take on it. It's my flavor of reggae. It's like all my other influences that I just kind of mentioned, all coming out into. Then I make it that style of music, and it's a little different, I think. So
yeah. Well, Let It Burn I have it. It's great. I don't mean to like geek boy throw up on it or anything, but it's really cool. And just the way you say your style of it, we've talked about this with some friends of ours. I like what you do. Because I hate when I hear reggae done by white dudes and they do the accent and all that.
That's not me.
I can't.
I'm not going to put on a dreadlock wig.
Yeah. So I mean, those songs. I mean, were they reggae songs or were they just songs again that you kind of had to make into reggae for Let It Burn?
For my record. I had pretty much intended on making that record.
Okay.
Like I started writing those songs when I was still on tour with Kings of Leon. Like pretty much every day off in hotel rooms, I would go grab some food, work on music in my hotel room, start demoing songs. I demoed almost all the songs in hotel rooms. That was pretty much my schedule on days off with that tour. And I just missed it because I was in a band years ago called the Supertones, like back in California. It was like a ska, reggae, rock kind of band. And I hadn't really written that stuff in so long. I kind of missed it. I still listen to it a ton, Bob Marley, Toots and the Maytals, all these old, Jamaican reggae and ska artists. And, I started writing a song that kind of sounded, I just was strumming like normal, like it'd be like a folk or country kind of strum or whatever. Like, this is a cool melody. And then one day I just decided like, I should do like a reggae record. Like this would be a cool kind of reggae flavored song. And that's just kind of where it went. So once I decided that, then every song after that was like, I had a focus, like I'm going to make it like this. And I might still start it where I'm just like, if you heard me playing it, it might just sound like singer-songwriter kind of thing. But, then when I start demoing the song, it's like, then I program some drum beats, bass line, all that stuff. Then it fully changes into this different thing. But even now, since the records came out, I've played, a couple shows in Nashville, then I've done a couple solo shows where I can't do what I do on the record because it's just me. So I'll play them kind of like I wrote them, where it's just me playing electric guitar with a bunch of reverb and, to kind of fill out the gaps, and it's just me playing guitar and singing. So it doesn't sound reggae at all. Because there's no way to really do that by yourself unless you I can't just be playing going on guitar. It gets a little, the bass and drums are what kind of make the rhythm of reggae. But, I guess to answer your question, I didn't intend to do it initially, but then the first one I kind of wrote for a new project or new record, once I kind of made it into a reggae song, I was like, this is cool, and I miss this. And I miss recording with horn players and having a bunch of like keys and synths and all these organs on the record. And that's kind of where it came from, And might have been a total left field record for people that follow me from the podcast and stuff, but like I said before, like turning people on to that kind of music, it's been cool. We've had a bunch of listeners email in like, I never really considered ever listening to reggae music. But because of your record or because of your Metallica covers being reggae, like I started listening to Bob Marley or whatever, it's like, and that's always the best place to start because he's like the king of, he's the Beatles of reggae. So
isn't that weird to think you're a gateway of Bob Marley and not the other way around?
I'll take it, man. I'll totally take that. But that's how it works, though. You take Metallica. Metallica's the reasons I discovered the Misfits.
Right.
Because they were influenced by the Misfits and loved that band. Like when they covered Last Caress and Green Hell on Garage Days, I was like, when I was young and got that record, I thought these were Metallica songs. I didn't know what cover songs were when I was that young. Then when I got a little older, I was like, oh, these are somebody else's songs. And I started learning about that as I'm learning guitar and stuff. And so that's why I was like, wow, who are the Misfits? And then I go find them and be like, oh my gosh, this whole other world opens up about that band. You know, then you take that band and who are they influenced by? And it's fun to go back in time. So if my music can do that for somebody, then great. That's cool. You know, if someone can listen to my record and go like, oh, I'll go listen to Bob Marley or just look up other reggae stuff. And it's tough with reggae and ska music because there's a lot of goofy stuff out there. It's the same thing with most genres, but ska, especially in the 90s, had this like resurgence and it was very ska rock. I liked a lot of it. I mean, I was in that scene, you know, in the 90s. In the kind of early 2000s. And it's very good. Like bands like Real Big Fish or the Aquabats, there's a goofiness to it, you know, it's like, but it got huge for a while, you know. So sometimes when I tell people like, oh yeah, I made a reggae ska record, they're like, oh, like Real Big Fish. I'm like, no, it's nothing like, no disrespect to those dudes at all, but it sounds zero like that, you know, like, cause a lot of people that music got so popular in the 90s, that's what most people think about when they think, especially ska music. And sometimes when you say reggae, they're like, oh, Sublime. You're like, yeah, they were cool, but it's different than that, you know, so go further back, you know.
Yeah.
But it's fun to do that with any band you like, you know, like, oh, I'm a huge fan of whatever, Hailstorm, you know, start following them on social media, see what other kind of music they're maybe posting about, or read interviews with them, or listen to interviews or podcasts where they talk about other bands. And like we had on the show, we were talking about all sorts of music, you know. Yeah. And it's cool to see. I mean, like anybody from them to Metallica, you'll hear them in interviews talk about other artists they love. Then you get into that and keep going back in time, and it's just a fun little experiment, you know. If you want to widen your, you know, taste in music. Yeah. If you don't, then just keep listening to one thing.
Were you into reggae at a young age, or was it because of ska and punk and your background in that kind of got you into it?
I got into reggae before ska. So a quick history lesson, very brief. Most people think that reggae started and then ska after that. Everyone always thought it was like a sped up version of reggae, and it was actually the opposite. Ska music kind of started first, like early, you know, 60s Jamaica.
Gotcha.
It's like a band there's one band in particular called the Scotalites. And even Bob Marley, before it was Bob Marley and the Wailers, he was in a thing called the Wailin' Wailers. Right. And they were like an old kind of R&B ska band. You know, ska came from R&B music. And then Bob Marley was kind of one of the pivotal dudes that kind of slowed it down. Probably just smoked a ton of weed and played a lot slower. And then that kind of turned into reggae. But I got introduced to it pretty, like in probably early high school. Just friends at school. And then I remember somebody even at my church was like playing me Bob Marley. And I was like, what is this? This is so cool and laid back. And started to learn how to play that kind of guitar, and where it's more a percussion instrument as opposed to a lead instrument. And, but then, you know, mid high school, also, that's when like the ska explosion happened in the 90s. So it was like, you couldn't ignore it. Yeah. It was everywhere. And then No Doubt was a huge one because they were like a local band where I grew up, you know, I grew up, you know, in Long Beach originally, but, you know, mainly Orange County. So, and they're from Anaheim, and it was like, everyone knew who No Doubt was there. And then they put out that Tragic Kingdom record and it just exploded. Yeah. And then all of a sudden everyone knew what ska music was and stuff like that. And Sublime got huge and all that stuff. So, yeah, but I definitely got into it at a young age, but then, you know, figuring out like the relationship with certain genres of music or what other artists are influenced by, you know, that's how I discovered The Clash, you know, and that became one of my favorite bands of all time, you know, and they had songs that had reggae influence and ska influence and punk influence and pop and dance and all this stuff. Yeah. It was like very eclectic band, you know. So it's an endless trail if you allow yourself to go down it.
Rudy Don't Fail. I love that song.
Oh yeah, Rudy Can't Fail.
You can't. Yeah. Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's the only other band that I've considering starting a podcast on. I haven't even looked to see if there's another one, but. If I had to do it right, though, I have to do it with a friend back in California who is a massive Clash fan. Yeah. You know, we were in a band together years ago that was very influenced by the Clash.
Would it be called Pod Clash?
Oh my God.
See, I don't know. If I had to do another one day, I don't know if I would do the pun thing again or not. You know, like
He's all about the puns. Don't get him started.
Well, I mean, that's what ours is. No, your podcast, you know. Same thing, you know. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be because you could do like a podcast calling or whatever. It's kind of easy, I think, to throw in the pun of the word podcast. There'd be maybe another one like shoot, I'm totally blanking. Some Clash fan I am. Like Rock the Podcast instead of Rock the Casbah or something. You know. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But there's also right now, like there's a podcast out on Spotify. Even though me and Clint have been dogging Spotify lately because of all their BS stuff, but I do need to listen to it because it's the whole. Even though I know a lot of their history and seen all the documentaries, there's a new Clash podcast out there, narrated by Chuck D from Public Enemy.
Oh wow!
And I think they have like 4 episodes out right now, but I need to listen to that because I'm a huge Public Enemy fan and Clash fan, so gotta check that out.
Yeah.
So is that something you're seriously considering, or is it just
Clash
like
podcast?
Yeah,
It's just one of the ideas on the chalkboard. I mean, one of these days, like I definitely can't take on another podcast right now
right.
because I'm about to start getting my Pirate Satellite podcast kind of back up and going too. Now that I'm on the road and I'm around other musicians, because mine's all just talking to artists and stuff, and it's a guest every episode kind of thing. And it's been kind of on a hiatus for the last year, so I'm gonna start getting that back up and going. So to throw a third one in there would be just
Right.
a little chaotic, you know. And my personal podcast, I mean, I don't have to stick to a schedule. I can kind of just throw them out whenever I can, you know. Where me and Clint have a pretty good regimen going, you know, where it's like every Monday something's got to come out.
Yeah.
Mine's a little more low pressure. So, but maybe, you know, one day when, you know, we bring this one to an end, I'll definitely want to do another one about a band just because it's really fun, you know. We'll see. Yeah. The Clash would be an obvious choice for me because I'm a huge fan, you know. I think when you're doing a podcast about a specific artist, it should definitely be one that's been around for a good while, where there's a lot of content, you know, like artists like Prince or The Clash or The Cure. Someone who has at least like a 20-year career, you know. If you did a podcast about like a band that only has 3 records out or something, you'd run out of content fairly quick, you know. Or Kiss, obviously, those guys, you know, they've been around forever, so someone can do Van Halen. I'm sure there's a bunch of these out there. I haven't even looked, but
I know there's a few Van Halen ones.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to them, but I guess kind of bring it back around. We asked Clint this, how long, you know, because Metallica's getting up there.
yeah.
How long do you think they have left? I mean, another album, tour cycle?
I hope that there's at least another album tour cycle.
Okay.
I mean, but you know, you have to kind of consider, as much as all of us would love for them to go on forever, it's like you obviously have to consider age and health and stamina and even songwriting ability or lyric writing ability. Like sometimes people just start to lose that, you know, like I've gotten this discussion with numerous people, and I've used Aerosmith as an example that they haven't made a good record in possibly 2 decades. Like, you know what I mean? Like since the early 90s. I mean, their last record I think was a cover record, which is fun. They're all still great musicians. Steven Tyler's still a hell of a singer. And I think sometimes maybe that chemistry just kind of goes away, you know, that you'd have when you were younger and stuff. So I don't know. With Metallica, I mean, if Hardwired is any indication, I mean, I'm sure they still got some good stuff left. I mean, that record's incredible. You know, I don't think many Metallica fans thought that a record like that would come out post Saint Anger. And even Death Magnetic, which I love. I love that record.
Yeah.
Sonically, it has its issues, but I still listen to that record a ton. There's some great songs on that record. So I think that James still has a ton of good songwriting in him. Lars is the great arranger. You know, even Trujillo just said recently, like, that, you know, they'll have another record sooner than later kind of thing. So I don't think we'll have to wait 8 years, which will be nice. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, I hope for at least another album cycle. You know, you got to consider, like, okay, let's say an album comes out so it's been 2.5 years since Hardwired.
Yeah.
So let's say another 2. Let's say 2. This is very generous without, you know, them taking their time to record. Let's say in 2 years they have another record out. What's James? 55 years old?
Yeah, I think they're all around 54.
So let's say if he's 55. Without looking it up. I mean, that's 2 more years still comes out, he'd be 57. Then a 3-year album cycle, he'd be 60 at the end of that album cycle. Now that people can't tour at age 60, I mean, look at the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
But the Rolling Stones aren't playing Metallica's kind of music.
Yeah,
You
true.
know, there's not a lot, like metal bands that have that high energy show. It's like, I don't know. I guess it's just a personal choice for them on when to just be realistic and be like, hey, like I physically can't really keep up with this. Or do you start touring and maybe not playing as many of the thrashers, you know, stuff that's more requires more endurance. I don't know. I mean, this is me just spitballing here, but I think I mean, in my dream world, they will never end, you know.
Yeah.
But I also don't want my favorite band to get to the point where it's kind of sad. You know, it's kind of like when your dog gets really old. It's like, man, he's in a lot of pain. He's not performing like he used to. Maybe it's time to hang it up, you know.
Well, I mean, you look at someone like Iron Maiden. I mean, they're energetic.
That's the thing too.
They're older.
They're a great
Kid
example.
Zex is a good example. They're
Oh yeah,
I mean,
they're
they're not
70.
at that high of a level, but they're.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pinnick is 70 and he's energetic on stage. I mean, I don't know.
yeah. I mean, it all, you know, time will tell, man. I mean, I would love it to go on for till, you know, they're 70. You know, yeah, I've seen Maiden a few times, and like, you know, I think as long as everyone takes care of themselves and remains healthy, and you know, I think we've got a lot of good years to come with Metallica. Which, you know, like I said, at least there's one more record, it'd be awesome. But if for some reason, worst case scenario, they're like, you know, just kidding, I think we're done.
Yeah.
I'd be bummed, but I also would be so glad that Hardwire was the last record I got.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a good point.
so we'll see. You know, I just know that like when there's certain bands where like, not that I want like U2 to hang it up because they're still a great live band. In my opinion, and I'm sure a ton of people would disagree with me, but I don't think they really made a good record in the last few. Maybe not enough to hang it up because they can still tour and they're still great players and Bono's still a great singer. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, maybe you just focus on touring and giving people the songs they want. But then there's that balance of like, do we want to be this like legacy act where we're just playing old songs? And I don't know. To me, Metallica's still very relevant, you know. So we'll see. You know, I'd like another Metallica record or two.
Yeah, for sure.
If they stick with Greg Fidelman too, I mean, then you know they'll sound great.
Yeah.
It's Hardwired sounds awesome.
Yeah, no doubt.
I still listen to it constantly. I mean, I've probably listened to that record more than any other record in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a good one. Yeah,
there's a few other records I've gotten to maybe in the last 6 months that I can't stop listening to, but that one's been very consistent on rotation.
Mhm.
Still is. Just had the vinyl on the other day before I left for a tour. So.
So Metallica live, what are a few songs that you've never seen them play that you would wish
Well,
you would get at your show?
speaking of Hardwired, Spit Out the Bone, I still haven't seen. I saw 4 shows on the World Wire tour and they didn't play Spit Out the Bone. I got it was always the Encore 1 slot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I either got Blackened or Battery, which is, hey, not complaining.
Yeah.
But Spit Out the Bone was such a big deal for them to debut that I really wanted to see that.
We got that in Kansas City.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, that was great.
I've never seen Fight Fire with Fire. Dyer's Eve, obviously, would be amazing. I would love to see some Black Album deep cuts.
Yeah.
My Friend of Misery is one of my top all-time Metallica songs, and I've only gotten to get on YouTube and see them play. You know, I've never seen that actually live.
Yeah.
Just the last 3. Just play the last 3 songs off that album.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you got Struggle Within. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many good ones. I wish they would have done that Black Album tour over here, like full on,
man.
where they played it backwards.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that like will. I have a friend that's like, listen. He told me this years ago. He's like, listen to the Black Album backwards and imagine that being the record. You know, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
It definitely like was like a banger at the beginning, and then it was like slowed down. But it was that. Or I think he told me one time to switch Enter Sandman and Struggle Within, and he thought that was a good one. But yeah, I mean, God, there's a ton of songs that I've never seen. I mean, like I've only seen them 5 times total. You know, and there's people that we've talked to that have seen them over 100 times. You know,
Yeah.
and there's always songs that they, you know, even the dude I was talking to at the show last night in Wichita, Joey. Something came up about the Death Magnetic tour, and that was the first time I saw them after all these years, and I always missed them because I was on tour. And I was like, I didn't look up the set list that I saw. I kind of forgot what they played. It's been like 8 years. And I was just like, oh my God, I got to see so many Death Magnetic songs. That was awesome. You know,
You might not ever see again.
Yeah, they played even Hero of the Day. They did Turn the Page when I saw them and stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah.
Stuff like there was a good number of songs in the set list I saw on the Death Magnetic tour that they didn't even play on this whole tour.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to see some more deep cuts, definitely for sure. We'll see. I hope they change the set list up a bit on this European thing they're about to do. And they'll do all the staples. They have to, Savitru and Puppets and saying all that stuff. They have to do it, but it'd be cool. They hinted at a few deep cuts. They did No Leaf Clover at the beginning of this last tour. They did
Unforgiven 3.
Unforgiven 3 is one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
Man. But we'll see, man.
Yeah. I got Dyer's Eve probably about 10 years ago. I was way up there in Dallas, and you could see him hit the cymbal before you heard the cymbal.
Yeah.
But I got Dyer's Eve.
Hey, that's awesome.
Couldn't
Man.
believe it.
Oh yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
That performance of them in what's the area? Is it Nice, Italy? Or how do you pronounce it? Nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is that the one? Is it Italy where they're in that cool or is it Greece or something?
Oh, France. Nimes or something like that.
That's it. Yeah. We did it. Gosh, I think we did an episode on it. That one is where they played Dyer's Eve, I think, for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
And it was so good.
That's a cool DVD, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Totally, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went and saw him on the St. Anger tour, and like I wasn't planning on going, but he talked me into it, and they played Bleeding Me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was
I haven't seen him play that since.
Yeah.
I've only seen him a few times since then, but
Yeah. Oh, even to hear some other load reload stuff would be great. Because they're only, this whole tour, they only did 2 off reload.
Yeah.
Nothing off the load. So, I mean, I even like Attitude or, Wasting My Hate. It was cool to see some of those songs.
I know.
But yeah, we'll see what the set list happens in Europe with the stadium thing. Hopefully some cool deep cuts, and I'm just excited about this S&M stuff, man.
Yeah, I know.
Now that there's 2 shows,
Yeah.
I hope they pull up some good
you
stuff.
know Leaf Clover will show back up there.
It has to.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
It's
for
like,
sure.
what are they going to play? Oh, my God. And they'll do some hardwired stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. Those are some hardware. I think they'll do Unforgiven 3. That one just begged. It has, the whole intro to it on the record is piano and strings.
Yeah.
So they got to do that.
Well, you guys' point about maybe that's why they played those songs.
That was Clint's. Yeah, Clint. His
Yeah.
observations
Yeah.
I thought was really good.
Yeah.
Is that,
I didn't even think about that, yeah.
dude, I didn't either until you said it. I was like, you're a genius.
Am I stupid to think that they should play those 3 songs in a row some day or so?
Which one?
Unforgiven, the 3 Unforgivens.
Oh yeah, well, our last 2 episodes ago, we did a whole thing on when they announced S&M 2, and we redid our Dream S&M set list, and I had it on my first one and this episode where it was the Unforgiven trilogy is played.
Yeah.
And I think the last one we did a couple weeks ago, it was they ended the main set with Unforgiven 1. And everyone thought, okay, cool, they did Unforgiven, like, they're not going to do anything,
Yeah.
They're not going to come back with Unforgiven 2. And then intermission happens, they come back and they do 2, and people are like, oh my gosh, and then they do 3, and minds are blown. I think their fans would freak out if they did all 3.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool, but who knows? I think we'll get the one, at least 1 and 3. Because, they've been playing 3, it begs for it. And in that announcement, they talked about doing stuff, new ones that came out after S&M. So, but they did say here's my theory is that they didn't specifically say we're going to do Michael Kamen's arrangements that were on S&M 1. They said we're going to be doing Michael Kamen arrangements. Now they did go through other songs that didn't make it on S&M that he wrote arrangements for.
Oh wow,
Interesting.
So we'll see. So because Sanitarium wasn't on there. Like that would have been awesome.
Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah.
Well, I know you guys talked about this on a show, but what do you think? Songs from Hardwired would work well in that setting.
Oh, Halo and Fire for sure.
Right.
I think that's a no-brainer. If they don't do that, I'm shocked. Halo and Fire. I think they'll do Atlas Rise, Halo and Fire, Moth into Flame. I can see them maybe doing Dream No More would be awesome.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of their heavy Sabbath True kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. My main one is Halo and Fire. That's almost my favorite song.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
And that one would just be so beautiful. Those quiet verses.
Yeah. It's like epic kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally, man.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, man. We appreciate you.
Heck yeah.
Thanks for the time.
I'm glad it worked out. I'm not
Yeah,
going to do it over
for
the
sure.
phone or anything. So
Yeah.
Cool.
There you go, Ethan Luck of Metal Up Your Podcast. A huge thank you to him for taking the time out there. We talked to him for over an hour, and that was a show day. So
Yeah, definitely.
That's
And then-
always really cool.
And then even after, when we were outside, we were talking to him forever. Super great guy, super gracious, and it's just cool to see somebody's path to so many different avenues and genres in the rock world. Just a great conversation. So glad we could have him on.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there, and back on our Clint episode, is that, you think these guys coming from a world outside of heavy metal, even though Ethan's been in a metal band, but it's like it gives them a different perspective that might end up being better than if just two metal fans are talking about Metallica all the time.
I think so. I mean, one of the things, when you start listening to these podcasts, you want things to make you go, wow, I never thought about it that way. And, there's a few different, Jamie Josta, Dean Del Rey, and, Metal Up Your Podcast. They all make me go, wow, no shit.
Yeah.
Alpha Metallica too.
Yeah, and that's another one to mention.
Yeah.
If you like Metallica podcast, Tom Quee does a great job. He's been going through the alphabet, basically, all Metallica songs in order alphabetically. Both Clint and Ethan have been on there more than once. Both Jason and I have been on there.
Yes.
And I know Jason will be on there again coming up, and
I'm going to be on there again. And
Ethan said they'll be on there again as well. Before
and he ramped it up. He's doing 2 episodes a week now, so he can hurry up and get it done.
Yeah, I think he's tired of it. Huh?
Yeah, I don't fucking blame him, man. The work that guy's put in, can you imagine?
But as soon as that ends, he's probably going to start one for someone else.
Oh yeah, he's going to do like he's talked about it. He's going to do one where he goes over, I think, a catalog, a band, an episode or something. I don't know. But then he talked about a System of a Down one on some of his episodes. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be wrapping up this fall. So, you should try to get on there again. There's still slots.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You might end up with a goddamn, Lulu song or something, but fuck,
Now, I know, the W's are still coming, and I asked him about Wasting My Hate a long time ago, and he said that was taken. It was probably taken by Ethan, because he mentioned it in this episode.
Yeah, and that's one of the Metallica's best songs ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, so.
Yeah. But yeah, so once again, a big thank you to Ethan, and Clint was on here on episode 207, so once again, go check that one out. And like we mentioned up front, here just about, I think it was episode 218, a couple episodes ago, we talked to our buddy Kevin Graham about, some recent Metallica shows that we had saw in Kansas City, Tulsa, and Wichita, and then just shows from the past as well. We've also had several episodes where we just talk about Metallica, whether it be the shows we saw or whatnot, all that kind of stuff. But we've got 219 more episodes you can go check out, and there's been Dave Elfson from Megadeth's been on here, Chris Broderick from Megadeth and Act of Defiance. We've also had on other metal guys like John Connolly from Seven Dust, Mike Dean and Reed Mullen were both on here separately from Corrosion and Conformity. We've had on Gene Simmons from Kiss, Bruce Kulick, formerly of Kiss. We've had on Tommy Victor from Prong, Kirk Winstein from Down and Crowbar, Jimmy Bauer from Down and Superjoint and I Hate God. And we've had on am I drawing a blank?
We always draw blanks.
Yeah, it's like I know all the Sons of Texas,
weird. Fuck me.
Candlebox, Warrant. We've had a lot of glam bands. If you
Yes.
like those, we make no apologies for the fact that we love that era and still do. We've had on guys
Yes,
from
definitely.
Slaughter, Kicks, Junkyard, LA Guns, Taiketo, Warrant, Trickster, Firehouse, Europe, Tesla, Dokken. I'm sure there's a couple more I'm forgetting. We've also had on Shooter Jennings. We've had on Wino from The Obsessed. We've had on guys from Death Angel. Sid Falk, formerly of Overkill, was on here for a 2-part episode. We've had on a ton of people from our regional area as well. So just dig through there and check it all out. LutheranUnderground.com. You can find all the podcasts there. You can also listen pretty much anywhere podcasts are heard. You can also hear us every Monday night, 7 p.m. Central on 102.7 WSNR. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Follow us on YouTube, or subscribe to us on YouTube. We've got a bunch of videos where we talk about shows, albums, cheese, random stuff. So yeah, just look it up. You'll get it. But yeah, I guess does that cover it for our number 220 here?
I think so.
All right, we'll be back, next week for episode 221, and it'll finally be a current episode as far as current events go.
Exactly.
Right? So, yeah, be on the lookout for that. And thanks again to Ethan Luck, MedFarm, and DEB Concerts. And until next time.
When they said that, doing Michael Kamen arrangements was okay. Well, surely Michael Kamen was like, "You guys, we got to do Unforgiven."
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's Unforgiven for the
Yeah,
symphony
exactly.
would be incredible. So maybe they did it. You know, 'cause I remember reading like rumors years ago about like here's some other ones that they had planned but didn't do. You know?
Yeah.
So they probably rehearsed and had another. I would think like at least another 4 songs
Yeah.
that Michael Kamen wrote arrangements for.
Exactly.
Maybe they did a big production rehearsal, and then narrowed it down. You know?
Yeah.
And I think if they would have actually performed that, we would all know about it.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
didn't put it on the record.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
so yeah, they didn't even do Unforgiven or Sanitarium
That's crazy.
or Fade to Black.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, you know one of those are going to
Yeah, it has to happen.
Sanitarium or Fade.
It has to.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. No Sanitarium, no Fade to Black. Like the songs you would think would have string arrangements.
Yeah, exactly.
Thunder Underground, y'all.